Hi and hello, watch fans, and welcome back to the Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighborhood watchmaker, Rob Nuds. I'm joined, as ever, by our friendly neighborhood jeweler in Amsterdam, Alon Ben Joseph. And today, Worn and Wine's very own Zach Weiss, as he's talking about his very own watch brand for the first time on the Real Time Show, at least, OraOrea. So we're looking forward to diving into that. But before we do that, let's welcome Zach to the studio and get to know him a little bit better. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, this will actually be my first time talking about the brand on anything, so thank you.
Okay, so we're your training ground. You've landed in a pretty soft space, to be honest. So, we really want to get to know you, and we want to get to know about the brand, because as a longtime journalist myself, and Alon as a growing figure in the journalism sphere as well, it's really, really interesting for us to see someone that has so much experience in that field step across the divide and now try and put all of those insights that you've gained over the years of experience into practice for yourself. So let's talk about that experience, Zach. How did it all begin?
Certainly. So I'm a lifelong watch fan. My dad got me into watches at a very young age. I legitimately can't remember a time when I wasn't wearing a watch or interested in watches. And to some extent, as a kid, I always had a Swatch on or a Fossil on or something. And, that just always stuck with me. And I kind of, as I developed an interest just in my life in art and design, that sort of flowed with me into college and graduate school. I have a master's in design, and I kind of always wanted to get into the watch industry after grad school. And actually, one of my first job interviews was with a watch company in New York City that does like licensing watches, like they do like Hello Kitty watches and stuff like that. And I didn't get the job, but I tried at that first thing. Maybe that was for the best though. Around 2011, which is when we started Worn and Wound, but the co-founder of Worn and Wound, Blake Mallon, who's a good friend of mine from college, we were hanging out a lot. He had a little extra money in his in his pocket, and he wanted to buy a watch, and he came to me knowing I was interested in watches and just like what I would recommend, and started looking at kind of like known brands, and started to see that there were some interesting affordable watches out there, but there wasn't a lot of content about them at the time. If there was content, it was on the forums, and it was maybe a little bit harder to digest than just like a well-written magazine kind of a thing, and not a lot of photography. So we just figured we'd do it for fun. This is like a side project, a healthier outlet for us than drinking beer and playing video games, which is what we were mostly doing. It just it hit a note with people. We just started getting, followers and started getting traffic, which was, any level of like traffic was exciting because we had no expectations. So, 50 readers in a week was cool, and then it just slowly built. 15 years later, we're still doing it. We have, a sizable company now. We also, run the Wind Up Watch Fairs, which we founded in 2015. We have our online store, Wind Up Watch Shop. We have our showroom in Brooklyn. So really, just turned that little hobby into career and obsession. And I still am very into watches, luckily.
What makes you so mad to start your own watch brand? Because as a big media outlet for watches, you know how difficult it is.
Yeah, in one sense, I should probably know better, right, than to go down this road. And it's the obsession, and I think I always wanted to make my own watches. I think that's really where this all started from. Had we had more money in 2011, had Kickstarter been more of a thing, it hadn't quite started yet. Like maybe we would have started a watch brand instead of a website about watches. I don't know. But 15 years later, thousands of little designs on my computer that I've been ruminating over, and I just I felt like it was time to try. And at least now I have the safety net. So if this completely fails, I'm not, it's not going to hurt me too bad, just emotionally. My ego will be wounded mostly.
So walk us through the first moment you said after these 15 years of wanting to start a watch brand. How did you start? Did you have an idea and was clear cut? Did you sketch around? Did you start with dial, case, diameter? Walk us through the process.
I'm always working on designs, and I'm working on designs with brands, doing collaborations, working on things internally for Worn and Wound, and then just working on things on my own for fun. Like there's been times where I've done a design a day kind of a thing just for my own amusement, and sometimes out of those will be like a spark of an idea, and I'll take those and develop them further. And the ones that are really good will develop for months and months and months and just tweak and tweak and tweak. And I'll have several of these things going. At a certain point, I just had a few that I was like, these are really good. I'm fairly confident based on my knowledge of, what's popular, my own taste, that I have some really strong designs here. And, so they were kind of sitting there but not doing, there was nothing happening with them, which was kind of stressful, in its own way. That combined with turning 40, which, just felt like a bit of a milestone or something in my life, like knowing a bit about building a business and just thinking, well, if I want it to be successful at this, if I want to have a brand that's up and running, I know from Worn and Wound, it's not something that happens overnight. It's going to take 5 years if we're lucky, 10 years, most likely. So I like to get this started now, so that'll be 50 when it's coasting rather than 60 or 70 or something like that. So, I mean, yeah, that was really the impetus for it. And, also as say, like with Worn and Wound, just having grown, there's more space in my own life to do it. Now that we have employees and things like that, that's helped a lot, not having to do everything. So
you've made one hell of a success out of what started out as a hobby, and you've put in the time. So you deserve your own crack at the big time. And from the looks of the 3 models that you're debuting with, you've got a real good shot of it, because you have chosen, interestingly, to debut with a pointer date. From what I've seen in the last couple of years, one of the most desired and one of the most seldom served complications on the market. I mean, a few years ago, it was all about chronographs. The GMT is having its day, but the pointer date has been, I think, highlighted by quite a few industry analysts as the next big thing. I love that. It's a very smart move, I believe. But what was your thinking behind it? Was it similar?
It was a little bit of like what I wanted in a watch. So the design that this first line is called, so it's a Coriolis line, and it's based around this index that's the hour index that's around the outside of the watch. That's sort of where the design started. It was just an index I was playing with, and it developed until it became something that I thought really just was dynamic and kind of spoke to an aesthetic. So the watch formed around that. As I was like kind of building out designs, I was thinking of it as a line, and that's sort of how I'm thinking of everything I designed. So there's a format, and here, the DNA of the Coriolis is around that index and, the case and things like that. But I have designs for many different potential complications, as well as, no complications too. And what I like about a date is functional. I like to have a date on a watch that I'm going to use every day. And, quite literally, punching a hole in the dial didn't work for this one. It just didn't feel right. I couldn't interrupt that index. So pointer date was really like the logical thing to do. And I'm also a bit obsessed with like the sort of off catalogs of some of the movement manufacturers. And Sellita has like an incredible catalog, and people use like 3 movements from them mostly. Sitting there was the 382, the SW382, which is a pointer date moon phase complication. But I was able to get it without the moon phase. I didn't want a moon phase on this watch, and they gave it a new number, the 386. So it's actually the first watch with this exact version of the 300, which is neat. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's a simple, elegant solution to a pointer date, to a date. And it's funny, most people see it and they're like, "Oh, you did a GMT," and I'm like, look again, it goes to 31.
I am wowed by the profile of the bezel, to be honest. I think the finishing choices that you've made are superb. It looks like it will sit so comfortably and low profile on the wrist, and you've made the perfect movement choice because it's slim and it's so. I mean, this has never been seen really from Sellita. Like you said, you've got your own catalog number, which is pretty impressive. But that even the standard point of date moon phase that they have is very, very rarely used. I too was mining through the back alleys of Sellita's catalog recently in search of a point of date GMT, which is something that I'm working on.
Interesting.
And they are almost impossible to find, to be honest. Like I'm sort of chasing down Dubois Dupre for one of their modules. I think that's the 331 or the 336, and then trying to find some movements that can power those effectively and reliably. And it's just, it's almost impossible. So you've maybe blazed a bit of a trail here with this one as a debut piece, especially to inspire other new makers to not stick to the beaten track, because we've all got a lot of 300s, 200s, 220s in our collections. And what did you say it was, a 386?
It's a 386, yeah.
The 386, okay. Did you didn't think about getting them to put like a ZW appellation
No,
on it as well?
I didn't have any influence on the numbering, just was able to get
Right,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
It's really cool though. So you've obviously got a good rapport with Sellita. Do you mind sharing with us what the minimum order quantity for something like that was for you? Or is that something that you need to keep under wraps?
I mean, I'm making 300 of these watches, 100 per color. So that was the minimum order quantity through the manufacturing that I'm working with.
Is your goal long term to, obviously you want to have success with OraOrea? There'd be seldom a reason other than that to try starting a watch brand, but would you envision yourself ever stepping away from Worn and Wound to run this full time in 10 years or 5 or 10 years time, say, or are you always going to be part of the Worn and Wound family?
I mean, I don't think there's any way to that I would ever fully step away from Worn and Wound, nor do I want to. It's something, I feels like my baby, right? It's, it's so integral to kind of who I've been for a large portion of my life. So, but I do see, logically speaking, if this grows, it's going to demand time, and I'll have to figure out how to split it. So I'll kind of cross that road when I get there. One of the benefits I have and advantages in doing this is that through Worn and Wound, I've built, with my partners, we've built infrastructure for doing this kind of thing. So we have warehousing, we have shipping, and I'm utilizing that for this. I'm not going to be, shipping these out of my apartment. We have people who are better at that than I could ever be. So, there's like a system there as well. But yeah, it's tricky. Well, yeah, we'll see where it goes. I already don't have enough time to write articles and things like that. So
I hope you get a discount at Wind Up. That's all I'm
yeah,
gonna
I
say.
hope so too.
On a serious note, on the Wind Up link, you've mentioned it now twice, Zach. Just to make it clear, is this a Zach Starr Weiss company, or is Worn and Wound invested as well?
No, this is 100% me. Yeah, so it's a Zach Starr Weiss. So yeah, the company is CSW Designs LLC. Really, is my company I own.
And we have a lot of listeners who are aspiring entrepreneurs, aspiring watch brand owners, founders, and some of them are doing it. Are you fully self-funded, or did you attract investors?
Yeah, I'm self-funded for this. I did consider the investors, like friends and kind of family sort of direction, but after doing the math, I was able to get this at least up and running, to the point it's at. And then the first launch will be a pre-order. It's like if so that'll kind of help fund the rest of it, though it is, if it were all fails, I'm not going to go into, they're not going to sue me. I can afford to pay the rest. I hopefully won't have to.
What's been the response from your colleagues in the media industry? I mean, you've obviously built up a great relationship with them over the years, as most of us that work in the industry for a while do, but because of Wind Up as well, especially with them being visitors to your fairs so frequently and thinking so highly of them, has that helped? You getting support from rival media titles, as it were?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm definitely closer with brands than I am with other media outlets, but I've reached out to all the people I know, and I have gotten a very nice response from my friends in the media and promises of coverage. But it's been more interesting to me is actually how other brands were like the first people when I ran into like a couple weeks ago. I was at Intersect in New York. It was happening. I didn't tell anyone I was going to be there. Just thought it'd be fun to go, and I did happen to wear my watch. I was thinking maybe it'd be good to wear it, and like immediately, brands were like, "Let me see it. I have to see it." So that level of enthusiasm is really exciting. There's been a few brands who have been really helpful to me on like in the process of just sometimes talking me you know if I have some crazy paranoid question about something and like just having somebody to bounce things off of. There's been some people I've talked to have been super helpful there. It's great how I think in the the micro brand independent space brands really are supportive of each other, um, which is nice to see for sure.
So right now, we'd obviously, I guess we have to class this as a micro brand or small independent. But I tend towards the term small independent when there's much more design that's gone into a piece, where it's not just like off the shelf components, it's emulating something else. And this clearly has a huge amount of character and your fingerprints all over it. So maybe we could call it an emerging small independent. But what's your long-term goal for it? Will you knock off the sort of entry-level calibers in a creative way as you have done with the 386 and stick within that vein? Or do you aspire to grow this brand to not maybe haute horlogerie level, but include complications like a tourbillon or a chiming mechanism, for example?
Yeah, I mean, no tourbillons or minute repeaters on the calendar yet. The way I'm kind of seeing it is that th- I want to find the movements that support the design and the ideas, right? And if that means having to go up market because I really want to make a super slim watch, or you could think of something like an Anita Boucher or something like that, right? Like that would be the reason to do that. It's not just to move up market. Like I want to always kind of have like a logic behind it. And maybe I do like precious metal watches, so I could see myself like dabbling in that a little bit at some point, which obviously would raise the price. But once again, it's not to just get into that really high level of that high price point. And I'm a designer also, not a watch engineer or watchmaker. So when I would, in terms of like creating bespoke movements and things like that, like that's not really something I see on the table as of this moment. But if the company grew and I was able to work with, or hire watchmakers and develop things, I could see that also moving up market. But at the same time, I actually could see some watches coming in at a lower price point than this first watch because once again, the correct movement might be in a 200 series or, you know, um, so yeah, just trying to follow the design rather than like, yeah, bracket myself too much, you know?
Talking of pricing, Zach, how difficult did you find it to come to the current list price that it is? And I believe it's 3,950 US dollars.
Yes. Yes.
How did you
Very
do your pricing?
difficult. It's very difficult. A lot of debating, modeling. This is probably where the industry experience has helped, like knowing where there were some pitfalls I've seen from brands who underestimated costs going into things. And at the same time, thinking about it as a collector and an enthusiast and sort of what I think is tolerable at certain price points, right? So um, I felt for the complications, for the level of finish and everything that I've put into the watch. Like at 3,950, it's the value is certainly there, and you'll be able to see it in the watch. And I don't think it's like it's not going to stress people. At the same time, it's enough that I can continue to move the company forward. I can continue to develop new products, which I'm eager to do kind of, quickly. I have a bunch of ideas I'm ready to get firing, and at the same time have some buffer for unpredictability, which, I think we're all looking at regularly here. So yeah.
Will you start off pre-orders, direct to consumer?
Mhm.
Will you have retailers on your roadmap?
Yeah, so I mean, the model is definitely more built around direct to consumer, but I would like to have like select retailers, um, who specialize in independent brands, mostly to put watches physically around the world. Less as like a volume play and more like, oh, if you're in XYZ country, please go here to see the watch. Because I know the value of seeing watches in person is really still unbeatable, and at this price point, I think it's even more. Um, more of a have to have. Oh yeah, that isn't the plan. The first watch though is pre-order. Like I said, that's really kind of like to get it off the ground. My hope is in the future to not do a pre-order model. Once again, that's approaching it as like an enthusiast and a collector. When I send money out there, I want something back kind of quickly. I say this as I'm waiting on multiple things for a while. You accept it, but I'd like to, if I can, not play into that too much.
Honestly, I didn't know you were a designer by education, nor did I know that you've been conceiving new designs as often as one a day in stretches since you graduated. I mean, as far as I see it, there's a huge amount of potential within this Coriolis platform, such as precious metals or artisanal dials in itself, but you must have hundreds of other ideas for models lined up for the future. What kind of release frequency are you planning?
Yeah, so that's something I'm trying to figure out. Part of me wants to be able, play a little safe at first and not, kind of go too fast and overwhelm myself and, kind of see what the actual day to day of the business will be before I am suddenly making like hundreds upon hundreds of watches a year. There's also some ego there, assuming I could sell any of these things. But I have a catalog currently thought out that is several years long at least, and I am constantly working on something new too. Um, and like the way I am thinking of it, like I said, is lines versus individual models. So like the pointer date is the start of Coriolis line. And you said exactly right. Like I have thought about what could enamel dial versions of this look like? What could like some, other techniques look like? What could other sizes look like as well? And how that could grow it. But then, so my hope is to kind of launch this. I don't want to put a date on anything because I've honestly been holding back getting the next thing started because it's just like I have to stop spending money. So, um, like whether or not that'll be, at the end of this year or more likely, sometime early next year that I'll be able to like unveil something new. And then, maybe come back and do colors and maybe expand on Coriolis and kind of go back and forth and then like add another line as I go. Once again, that's sort of an experience thing I've noticed. I think so. Yeah, I mean, you put so much effort into one design. You spend so much on tooling. Like, I think a lot of brands, they do this and then they move on from a design. And it's sort of like, there's a lot of like lost potential, I think, in doing that. So, my personal approach is just to try and get more out of it. Yeah.
We're talking a lot about product specifically, which is a really interesting rabbit hole to run through. But I want to talk about brand, the whole construction of a universe, the message of OraOrea, how you intend on communicating to people what it is that you stand for that sets you apart from the pack. Obviously, your personal experience is superb, but there needs to be more than you in a USP, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, building brands is tricky. And I'm not, like I said, coming at this with like a specific theme for the brand, right? It's not a pilot watch brand or dive watch brand or something like that. It's a platform for me to create product through. Um, what I have tried to do with the branding, the name OraOrea, which um, I end up choosing because I like the sound of the word. It's like it comes from Latin for golden hour, but I put the words together and spelt it in a different way. It has like a musicality to it. It has like I think an approachability to it. And then the logo that I created is sort of a quirky logo. It should kind of I don't want to have that sort of like old school luxury feel to it. That's also just not me as a person, even if the watches might be priced in this, whatever. The word luxury is always tricky, but a few $1,000s is certainly a luxury product. So the brand itself should be approachable and should be kind of, style focused, taste focused. And in terms of like what's uniting the watches, the way I see the approach is that it's about creating keepers. It's about creating watches that are, as a collector and enthusiast, have this level of like detail and thought from every angle, from the novelty of them, from the use of complications, where these are the watches that you don't want to let go of. And maybe, I don't think there's a brand out there that makes watches that they want people to flip, but like, I think it's like it's really about finding substance in the design. And sort of when I know a design is finished is when I feel like I've created something that I myself, as this collector and enthusiast, would hold on to. It has the kind of special X factors of a watch. Aesthetically, I think what is uniting them is more, kind of my sense of style and taste, but I don't really want to pigeonhole that either. So there's definitely a mid-century to kind of neo-traditional sort of element in my designs. I think you'll see that in other designs as well. But let's say it's not like as cohesive of a DNA as like Ming has, where everything is so core Ming. So kind
It's so funny that you should reference Ming, because I was thinking the only visual sort of reference I sort of see is this as a dress Ming. It's like, oh, it's like a classy Ming. It's like a sort of steampunk Ming almost. Also, somehow in the logo, they're not at all similar. I love the logo, actually. It's somehow simultaneously runic and simultaneously Tron. I don't really know how to place it, but you've done a really good job there. I have a tagline for your brand.
Okay.
I'll invoice you later, don't worry.
I like it.
Finding substance in style. And that might be a nice way to sort of summarize what you were saying, because I do see where you're coming from. I certainly love the idea of you looking at movements and that fit your design, not bending to the stuff that's on the shelf. That takes, I can imagine, a lot of time, quite a lot of patience on your part, the back and forth with movement companies and trying to find suppliers that are willing to work with you and be flexible can't be easy. I have a question that may sound a little frivolous, but I have a point behind it, so indulge me if you know the answer. Do you know how many articles you've written over your career?
I don't.
I mean, we're talking over, I'd say at least 2,000, right? We're sort of in that sort of ballpark.
Yeah, I would guess that, but yeah, I've never looked. Especially, there's the main articles, then there's all the little things you write too. So it's like, I don't know, but it's definitely in the thousands.
But we can comfortably say you've covered thousands of watches, and as one of the organizers of Wind Up, you surely have had thousands of watches pass through your hands. Were there any articles or encounters with watches in person that really gave you a kick up the arse when it came to starting your own project and made you think, you know what, I can do this? And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. But if just seeing something that really inspired you maybe to take the leap.
I feel like, though, like maybe since I sort of got to the mental space of like, I am going to do this, I've definitely, I think, seen more inspiration from brands. Like, I know it's not really the question you asked, but like, whether it's, I'm talking to like Sylvain Berneron about his watches and hearing his very well thought out plans for how he's like building his company, and just like taking some inspiration from that, somebody who's kind of doing something very distinctive and has this, rigorous idea about how to build a company. And, not that I'm going to emulate that, but I like hearing about that kind of stuff. Similarly, having lunch with Nicholas from Fears and how talking to him about his company and how he's building it and what models are doing, well, and just all that kind of stuff. I feel like I've really, I've begun absorbing it a little bit more as somebody who's trying to think about how I'm going to navigate this space, with an actual brand. But yeah, as if there was a specific model, though, I don't know. I'm, you know what it's like at this point when you've seen so many watches, and like some days you're just like, oh, here's another this, here's another that, here's another this, and then something just comes across your email, and you're just like mind blown. Whenever that happens, it just gives me like, faith that there's still opportunity, there's still ideas to be had out there, and that happens pretty regularly. I have in my Slack actually open a photo of the Otsuka Low-Tech number 8. Like that thing is incredible. I was just looking at the Niton jump hour earlier because that thing is gorgeous. Just it's all around. So.
Rob gave you free advice, and we like to coin things
Like
on
that.
the Real Time Show, especially nicknames. So, Double O, has that been coined already, Zach, in the Worn and Wound offices?
No, it has
So
not.
hereby, you heard it the first time on the Real Time Show. Zach's brand is Double O, D double O.
Okay, interesting.
Talking of epic brands, epic designs, doing it or not doing it, did you ever consider reviving a old dormant watch brand, or was it always clear to you that it had to be a new brand?
Yeah, no, I hadn't really considered reviving something old. I also, never in my experience came across like an opportunity like that where there was, a dormant brand I could pick up or something, which I always think is interesting when you find out people kind of have crossed paths with these documents or something like that. The one I think probably the first one I ever heard of was when, Bill Yao from Mark II, mentioned he had Tornek. And I was just like, how do you have Tornek? Right? That's insane, and he's turned it into a brand, just, coming across these documents or something in an archive. But yeah, that hasn't happened to me. So no, it was always going to be a new brand.
The time is not ideal to launch a watch brand. Did you consider in the last 3-4 months to postpone, or was there literally no way back?
It's never the right time, I feel like, and then it's always kind of, so it always is the right time. And this project's been in the works for a while. This watch actually wasn't even the first watch that I was working on. There was a whole nother watch with a whole nother manufacturing group that fell apart, unfortunately. So, this could have been a year ago that we were talking had that happened. But, at a certain point, it's like my impatience is just running up. I have it here. It's ready to go. The samples are good. You know what I mean? It's like I had to pull the trigger. And how many things have changed in the several months even since I've done that. Just hope for the best at this point.
I'm a bit annoyed at you, actually, because
Sorry.
well, you'll probably not be too sorry when I tell you why. I was just studying some of the macro shots, and I was looking at the hour hand, and it is absolutely gorgeous. The double level, the finishing, the bicolor. Yeah, you've ruined all the other hour hands for me now. So,
Wow, thanks.
well done. When do
Appreciate
these flashes come from? Because there's so many things in this watch. It's clear it's been designed by somebody that's got not just a deft touch with design, but also a huge amount of experience to sort of, what people are looking for. The little things that add quality. An exquisitely finished handset is one of the best things. Like I always say to clients, if you're going to blow the budget anywhere, blow it on the hands and the dial. And, people often try and sneak away with cheap, stamped hands, poorly finished hands. These look like they've been lovingly hand pressed in Switzerland. But was it a horrible invoice to receive when you saw how much they were going to cost you?
Um, it's funny with the hands specifically. When I was going back and forth with like engineering originally, they're like, these are gonna be very expensive. There's other ways you can make this, and I was like, let's find out how expensive they're gonna be before like we pulled back because I wasn't looking to value engineer it. To the point I was saying before, I was kind of like, it should cost what it has to cost to succeed as the design that I wanted to. And the limitations with this one really, like, at a certain point, I wasn't gonna be able to afford to make. Luckily, this was below that threshold when it all came in. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it was very expensive to do. I didn't choose any like you know cheaper options on anything. And yeah, with the hands, and like the little elements that are there that hopefully that you pick up on, like, and I thank you for picking up on that, like the layering there. It's I have just tons of variations of things in my design files, and at a certain point one just kind of clicks, and maybe I have a few versions of it, and if there's something I keep coming back to, and if I go away from my computer for a couple of weeks and like look and like that's the one, then it ends up I kind of trust my instinct there, and having that two-tone hand um was, yeah, I mean, it just was very cool. And I don't even use it as two-tone on every model. I like that the depth is there. But with the whole watch, there's a lot of modularity, so like I can change the colors on so many different things for moving forward, including the case. I could do like the mid case is 3 parts, so I could change finishing between the 3 parts. I could change the material on one of them and stuff like that. Whether or not I will, it's a question, but it's just I like having that potential there.
In my opinion, it's precisely these elements, these remarkably well finished, well thought out components that make watches like this into a keeper. Because some watches blow your socks off when you see them hit your inbox or when you first get them on your wrist at whatever fair around the world, and you're like, "Oh, blimey, they've really thrown the kitchen sink at this design. It's impossible to ignore because it's so loud and it's so brash." Those are the watches that kind of they woo you instantly, you fall in love with them for a week, and then you're sick of them, and you're like, "Oh my God, just shut up, stop nagging at me. I don't want to wear you anymore. Like, go away." And then you've got the quieter heroes. Now, this watch is far from boring. It's extremely interesting with the multi-level dial and the creative and sensitive use of color, but it whispers, it doesn't shout, and it's the kind of thing to me that will continue to whisper sweet nothings into your wrist for
I
as
like
long
that.
as you have it. And I think that there's, I know it sounds like I'm trying to draw some kind of relationship analogy here awkwardly. Maybe I am. That there's something about a watch like this that I think you fall in love with more over time. It gets more beautiful the more you look at it. You see it again and again. You learn more about it. It reveals itself to you in different ways. Hands with that kind of finishing and those kind of levels are going to look completely different depending on the way the light hits them, if it's natural or artificial or if it's colored, and it will because of their potential to leap out of the dial and to grab your heartstrings is so vast. It enhances everything else around them. They all feed off each other. And yeah, you said at the top your goal was to make keepers, and you also qualified that by saying, well, no brand wants people to flip stuff, but some brands don't. They clearly don't care. You really have taken pains here to get as much into a refined and classical dial as possible without making it scream. And I just think it's a great achievement, and
Thank you.
you should be super proud of yourself. And I'm not really angry at you. My bank balance is probably
I,
going to be having a word, but yes. It's super, super stuff. Where or when will people be able to see these pieces in real life? Because I guess only the prototypes exist, and anyone that doesn't buy one on pre-order risks the chance of missing out entirely.
um, yeah. So, well, that'd be interesting if they sell out. Fingers crossed, I guess. But I will actually have a booth at Wind Up Watch Fair San Francisco, which is the first weekend in May. Um, yeah, planning the launch date, that was another thing. You're asking like when I was going to do this. Like being in the industry, I also we know these cycles a bit and like trying to find like a hole where I could launch it between different things, so like part of the reason it's coming out next week is because it's sort of in that the like doldrums before Watches and Wonders happens, because after Watches and Wonders happens, you're like, it's impossible to get anything out there for a few weeks at least, plus for traveling and doing all these other things. So it was to launch here and then show it in May at the Wind Up Watch Fair. Since it's my first run, I just assume something's going to go wrong. So like I'm giving the pre-order a nice breadth of like a window, under promise, over deliver, but things are moving along steadily. So hopefully there'll be finals sooner than later.
Do you intend on holding back some models from sale from the 300 that you're making available so that you will have some physical pieces that you can continue to just show the brand with?
I was going to hold a few back. I mean, also just for, once again, security purposes of like the first run, I want to just be extra safe, and hold extras. But yeah, it is, it is great. If you're at a fair, a wind-up fair, it is good to have inventory people can take away. Once again, talking from personal experience, like the shopping I've done at our own windups, I only end up buying something that I can walk away from a table from, which brands are probably gonna be mad at me for saying this because a lot of them don't, but it's like the impulse aspect of it is so important kind of in person. So
I assume you have a relatively vast collection. Is that a correct assumption?
I have a number of watches, yes.
Yes, I won't ask you what that number is specifically, nor where you live. But did you have to sell, or did you feel yourself inclined to sell any or many of those pieces in the run-up to the foundation of OraOrea?
I'd like to say I've slowed down, but I don't know if that's even true. I feel like I've just like bought less, but kind of sometimes more expensive pieces. Yeah, at the moment I haven't, but there is the reality that like, just practically speaking, I want to wear my watches now more than a lot of the watches that I have because I really like it. Obviously, I'm proud of it, but then it's, one of these things. It's like now I'm also the ambassador for the brand, so I have to like support, show it. And it is difficult because I have some really beautiful pieces that like, am I going to double wrist? Am I going to be that guy now, like wearing a Garrick on my one wrist and then my watch on the other? It's like maybe, but yeah, I definitely need to stop buying watches.
Dude, double
From here
wristing is not a question, so that's a must. And
It's a
you'll
must,
hit the next problem when you have your third 00 watch come out, because then you need to pick between the three. I was studying the pictures like Rob did, and I already commented before we started recording about that syringe hand, which is indeed stunning. You know what caught my eye as well is the stitching on the beautiful Vachetta watch straps.
Oh, thank you.
And then,
Thank you.
so that's a little shout out to you. I'm very sensitive to beautiful leather products, stitching, and fonts. So my question to you is,
Mhm.
did you have any help on fonts? Because our dear listeners know I love any font and any type of alphabet, but I don't have a lot of watches in Roman numerals, although your watch could be a contender.
He hates them. He absolutely hates them. He has binned off the more wonderful watches than you could ever imagine just because he got Roman numerals. And sometimes when a watch is beautiful, I don't even notice it. But you've got to admit, this works here, Alan. You've got to put your hand in your pocket. Come on.
The first time I saw the pictures with the dancing, I call them dancing Roman numerals. So the jumping one up and down, stunning, well done. They're rather short, so stout. They're not high, which gives a cool effect. And I don't like to compare watches, but it gives me a vibe that you gave a nod to Frodzham, who also has very beautiful short Roman numerals. And it gave me a bit of these very elegant Omega DeVille watches that are very underrated, the modern DeVille ones, that they also do a Roman numeral and then a beautiful golden hemisphere like you've done. So they alternate. Kudos to you. The question was, because Rob always tells me, keep them short, Alon, you talk too much. So here is the short question. Did you do the fonts yourself, yes or no?
Yes. Yes, I did.
So we salute you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, big typography fan. And, that's just always something I've kind of felt with watches, like you're going to go so far to design so much and then use a standard typeface on your dial. Just, I don't know, it feels like a bit of a miss to me. To do that, I don't mean to, like, once again, I don't want to insult brands who do it. There's plenty of gorgeous typefaces out there to take and even amend or something. But for me, it just felt like the DNA has to be consistently mine.
Dude, this is the real time show. You can say whatever you want. So you can say that it's insulting to us collectors when brands do that.
Sometimes, yeah. I don't know. Hey,
Um,
if you're, caveat, if you choose the right type, like, taste and obviously design still plays in, you can choose the right. But yeah, for me, really, I wanted to design my own. It's also just a challenge. Particularly actually on the numeral sets, like for the pointer index there, like to make something that was legible, but then a little bit unique. Somebody already called the one provocative, which I wonder if that means they didn't like it. So it's like I, um, it's part of the game for me.
if other brands would call you to help them with a design or just an element of their design, like fonts, for example, would you?
Not to like turn this into like advertising, but like through Worn and Wound, we would, and so I like through our like creative services, I definitely have consulted with brands on typography, design, things like that. As OraOrea, I wouldn't.
It's interesting because I was studying your case back as well. And that reminded me an episode that aired a few weeks ago and a beautiful discussion between Rob and David Vaucher, my two dear colleagues. And I always say I don't listen to any episode of the Real Time Show where my voice is heard, but when my voice isn't heard, I listen from the beginning to the end. And it was an actually very cool discussion between Rob and David about American products where they state the state instead of saying made in the US. How big of a deliberation was it for you, Zach, to write design in Brooklyn instead of New York, New York City, state New York, or the US?
I actually wasn't much of a deliberation because I knew I definitely wanted to say designed in Brooklyn. I think a lot of people use New York City a little freely, perhaps. That they do something here. In New York City, obviously, is the whole city. It's 5 boroughs. I'm based in Brooklyn. I grew up in New York City, so I take it seriously as a native New Yorker. And yeah, I've lived in Brooklyn for the last, I don't even know, 20 odd years. So um, Brooklyn's where I was designed. You know,
I wonder how many of our listeners could name all 5 boroughs of New York, and whether we could find a watch from each of them. I'm guessing the one that people would. I think Staten Island is the 5th one that people would forget, right?
yeah,
But
probably.
are there any? Is there a Staten Island watch company? Because it sounds like a really cool name.
Yeah, not that I know of.
And you know that Brooklyn is Dutch. It's Breukelen. Like Harlem
Mhm.
is Haarlem.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that.
here you go. If you want a Dutch ambassador, Zach, you know where I'm at.
Okay,
So,
perfect. Yeah.
You know,
all kidding aside,
you made me think of something before, Alon, when you were saying, this is a pretty troubling climate or a difficult climate into which to launch a watch. And asked Zach whether he considered delaying. And I was thinking, well, it might be a long delay. You never know. I mean, the last time it was a good time to launch a watch was about 5 years ago. So we're way out from that. But I wanted to chime in with your catchphrase of all things, Alon. A beautiful watch is a sold watch. Give it to us in Dutch.
een mooi horloge is een verkocht horloge.
There's always space for quality products and great design and a new way of thinking. So I think you're going to hit the ground running. Have
Thank
you
you.
got any plans for building and maintaining a community on a platform separate to private channels or Instagram or anything like that? Any sort of space for them? Any events happening in Brooklyn?
Not yet. Not yet. And yeah, I mean that's a good example of the kind of like company aspect that is I'm probably underestimating the sort of time that it's going to take. But yeah, kind of get it off the ground first, this is such a hectic time of year, and I'm just making it more intense. So get through like halfway through May, and then I'm gonna, hopefully be able to take a step back and, think about doing some more events. Once again, not a plug for for OraOrea, but we have our showroom, and we do a lot of showroom events with brands. So I actually like have a space that I could utilize for this, bring people in.
Do you have a personal life outside of watches, or is it all work and watches?
A very small one, modest. I have a fiance. I've got a couple cats that are running around me right now. It's funny. Somebody was asking me about my hobbies, and I always have a hard time like naming hobbies because like watches were the hobby, they became the profession, and then the last couple of years, like I've been doing this a lot when I'm not working at Warner Wound. So um, it is a bit. It is all immersive. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty non-stop, isn't it? Because you're able to do basically 2 full-time jobs at once, in addition to a load of traveling. Actually, maybe let's say 3 full-time jobs, because you're writing, you're event organizing, you're creating a brand, and you're traveling all over the place. I've always had more than one job in the industry, and I've always said that each job is relaxation from the other job. Like, it's just a change is as good as a break, is my philosophy. But how does it affect you when you get home? Like, I guess you probably work quite long hours a lot of the time, and maybe that doesn't stop when you get home. But I mean, when you switch off, are you able to come down from that high level of operation, or do you struggle with it personally?
I can come down from it. I think you make me sound way more astute than I, I really am. And also, once again, to be clear, like, one of the great things about Warner Wound now is that we have employees. So like event organizing, I don't really do. It's like, I mean, we have, Kyle and Nellie and Myra. They're organizing the events. Um, you know, we advise, we guide things, and show up a lot of the time now. Back in the day, when we were first, for several years of doing wind up, yeah, I mean, it was brutal. Like we would the setup and the breakdown and everything was just it was all encompassing. But now there's more space, like I said, to kind of be able to do this. Uh, but yeah, there is. I mean, there is definitely. I know you said about like switching between the different things we do, and that can be tricky. I definitely think sometimes like writing in particular is a specific mindset that it can't always just like flip into. It kind of like I kind of need to like ease into being able to write like a full long article or a script or something like that. So I kind of need to, I don't know, somehow transition between different things. Designing I find relaxing though, and like I can do it all the time. And I often I'll design while watching TV and things like that too. It's just I'm just at times just moving little things around, changing little colors, and then other times it's more intensive. Um, so I also have a lot of photography, which I also find quite like it's immersive, but it's like not stressful. It's like a lot of fun. Yeah,
There we go. We found your hobby. That's a hobby,
right.
surely. Like,
Photographing
now he's
watches, though, but yeah.
Oh, damn! I was
Yeah.
so close. I thought it was going to be like street art or like skyscrapers or Brooklyn by night or something. But nope, just watches.
I need to get out more with my cameras, but yeah, and in general.
I'm sure. I always think that maybe we're missing a lot of opportunities with our lives being so often on the road and being lucky enough to travel to different parts of the world and see different cities, to not create more content around those. I'm not saying you don't do as much as you think you should, but I know I don't do as much as I wish I had, because so many things that have happened, and now like that, in the moment when you're just focused on the people in front of you and either getting the job done or finishing whatever pint someone has just put into your hand, you forget, and then it's all gone. But do you keep a journal of any kind to remind yourself of where you've been and what you've done?
No journal. I mean, Instagram, and I mean, I do take a lot of photos wherever I am. I might not post them, but I have my Leica with me or my phone with me. Yeah, I've never been a good journaler. I've tried that in the past, and like, it's one of those things. It's like once it becomes something I have to do or something, I can't do it. It's like It becomes like it's like homework or something.
Yeah. I've not done it since I was probably about 13 or 14, and I
Yeah.
uncovered my old diaries from those ages
Really.
the other day. Yeah, it's excruciating reading. They're
Yeah.
all they're beautifully made little tiny books. So I used to love books to be as small as possible. I used to like those micro comics that you would get in cereal boxes and whatnot, and I used to like the condensed Asterix and Tintin albums when they would make them into like a maybe A5 or something like C6 sort of shape and size. But these diaries, man, it's painful reading. I was such a loser, and every single day ended with "I heart," and then it was at least one girl's name. And some days were just like a list of like two girls alternating, "I heart Jessie," or "Do I heart Sarah?" "I heart Jessie," or "Do," and I'm like, fucking hell, it doesn't really matter, does it, Rob? Because neither one was bothered. And I read them. I forced myself to read them and think, I suppose life has got a little better since then. And maybe that's what scares me about journaling now, in case I read it in 10 years' time and I'm like, fuck, what a loser.
Right.
Absolute loser. So
Yeah, you don't.
I'm protecting my ego.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I'm for that reason definitely glad I did not have a diary from that age. So
Which is a wild segue back to something you said right at the start of the show, and this is going to be the last little question. And we're diving into the sort of more personal side of things and the psychology of it, because our lives look, I think, oftentimes very glamorous from the outside looking in, because a lot of people don't see the work that goes in between, and the amount of your personality that you invest in a project like this is massive. And you said, financially, yeah, okay, it'd be great to be successful, but if you fail, you're not going to have bailiffs knocking down your door. The only thing on the line is your ego. And that's an interesting thing. You don't strike me as a particularly egoistic guy, but I know personally, maybe I do come across as an arrogant prick, actually, now I think about it, but I'm actually not that bad. But I am quite vain in the sense that I do like to be recognized for not being totally shit. And maybe if I'm being honest and self-critical, that might have something to do with why I haven't pushed on my own project and got it out there in the last 23 years at some point. And which is why I'm impressed by what you've done, and why, we wish you all the best. We hope it goes really well. And I think, if it can be said, I think you deserve it, and
I appreciate that.
fingers crossed. But what would happen to you mentally if it didn't work?
Yeah, and I should also be clear, like financially would suck too. It's like a lot invested in this, but
At least you have a load of sweet watches.
yeah, I have the sweet watches, and I have I have a job, so like there's that. But yeah, there is a lot invested in this. A lot, my of personal, I'm taking risks. Like this feels really like me being put out there, and that's part of the doing this was, to have my name associated with watch design. And it's why I did put my name on the back of it, which I know not everyone does. I mean, a lot of people are fortunate they can have their name on the dial in some way, shape, or form, but none of my names were trademarkable or they were taken.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if it's an utter disaster, if people hate it, it's it's very much coming back at like, well, I was wrong, right? I was this time, this theory I had on my taste, my design skills was all wrong, and that would certainly be very embarrassing and hurt. So I'm hoping I'm fairly confident it won't happen. But that's the risk. And yeah.
Well, look, there's nothing to be embarrassed about however it goes, because the only embarrassing thing is not to try. And you are trying, you're taking the risk, you're putting yourself out there. And I don't think you've got much to worry about. But if it did not go the way you wanted to, I would say it may not be the fact that you were wrong. It may just be you might be ahead of your time. You might have missed a window by a year or two. Ironically, so much in this industry does just come down to timing. I think that you are hitting the market at the right time. So we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the pieces in real life. Right, we'll wrap it up there. Zach, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and can't wait to see you in person, hopefully in Geneva. And I'm sure you'll have one of the OraOrea watches on your wrist. And if any of our listeners have questions for Zach, and I'm sure many of them will, because I think this is a topic that engages so many of our community who have aspirations of their own to eventually make their own watch brand and bring their dreams to life, then please do reach out to us via the usual channels. You can contact us on Instagram at therealtime.show or via the official contact form on www.therealtime.show. We'll be back soon with more top quality watch content and interviews with the industry's finest. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.